Alrighty, what's up everybody? Welcome back to another one of these review type videos. I'm talking about one of my favorite bands. We're talking about Marillion. I'm repping the merch. Summer's coming up here in LA. It's getting a little hot, so at any point if I turn on the air conditioner, you know why, because these lights are fucking hot. Great, we're talking about this band because I love them. I think they deserve a lot more recognition. So if you haven't checked out any progressive rock music, this is in the progressive rock genre. More specifically, neo-progressive, so it's a little dramatic. Very big on atmosphere. I was introduced by listening to Script for a Jester's Tear because I heard that Marillion were a good band and you should check them out because I was a huge Genesis fan and Marillion were very big on the whole Genesis stuff. So I checked out Script for a Jester's Tear. I liked it. I didn't start getting into Marillion until about a year ago, and I had listened to them 3 years ago. Yeah, it's Clutching at Straws. It's their fourth album with their lead singer Fish, and their fourth official album after their huge hit album Misplaced Childhood. Lead single Kaylee off of that one. If you were born in the 80s, you probably heard it at some point. It's funny because that song is not representative of what the band is at all. But I wanted to talk about Clutching because I think Clutching at Straws is the best album for a lot of Marillion fans. A lot of people would say Misplaced Childhood. I think people only think that because it was a hit record, but people don't realize that it's not as good as they think it is. Sorry guys, White Feather and Childhood's End are just kind of throwaway for me. But man, when I heard Clutching at Straws for the first time, it's like a wave. Like a wave. I guess you could say like a big ocean cloud. It's pretty good. I do think Clutching at Straws is their best album. I do think there's an album that is just as good. Marillion has a bunch of like 10 out of 10 albums, so you should check out. So this is a band you should get into and really pay attention and listen to. I'm not brave enough at this point to tell you what my favorite album is, but I'll tell you later. But this is right there. Yeah, so just look at the fucking... you got this guy, who I'll tell you about. You got James Dean, a bunch of famous people. This guy in the front, his name is Torch, actually is a reoccurring character in the Marillion discography. The first 4 albums, they actually decided to give him a name, and his name is Torch. He actually has a song dedicated to him called Torch Song. It's not as sweet as you think it is. Oh, shit. Now, why do I recommend this album? Because it's genius, that's why. Fish is kind of known to be a highbrow poet. Fish is the lead singer. I do think this is his best poetry. Some of his stuff in the past albums are a little bit too out there, try a little too hard, but this is just perfect, right at the middle, exactly where he needs to be, not going over the top like in Fugazi. Everybody on here, every member of the band puts their best material on here. Ian Mosley, the drummer, his best drumming. I mean, just for the record, Incommunicado, White Russian. I mean, Pete Travas with his great bass lines, Slunge Nama. Great shit. Steve Rothery, obviously an amazing guitar player. He kind of fits in the same mold as David Gilmour, but Steve Rothery plays around a little more, tries some new sounds, his tone is different, and it works really well. Obviously, Fish is a great storyteller. I wouldn't say he's the best singer, but he can sing, so that's all that counts. Subject material, if you're big on that, is really touching. It gives you this great, dingy, dark, dirty feeling, atmosphere in warm, wet circles, the Phaedra house, the watering hole. In a lot of ways, this is kind of autobiographical because Torch is a representation of Fish in a lot of ways. Fish projects his insecurities, his experiences onto Torch. It's kind of dark. I would say some of the stuff here is kind of suspect. The subject material is a little suspect. It's really brave. Talks about drug addiction and alcoholism and depression, racism. Heavy material, and Fish writes it with such balls. White Russian talking about the Austrian, white power movement, the commies. Torch song talking about fucking drinking yourself to death. Just for the record, using an excuse to use substances as inspiration. He says, I can stop anytime, but just for the record, I'm going to put it down, but I'm just using inspiration. This is my inspiration. This is what I do to write music. Kerouac. The atmosphere on here, it really makes the fucking record. I mean, you really feel this huge sound. Ian Mosley's drums are just perfect on here. There are a couple versions of this album. There's the 2018 remix remaster, and then you have the original. I have the 1999 24-bit digital remaster of the original record. I do think that the original sounds better than the remix, just because the drums in the remix are a little darker. They kind of took out some of the highs in the frequency range, took out some of the reverb, pushed Fish's vocals up to the front, kind of compressed it a lot, so it's not as dynamic. But I like the raw sound of the original, so that's why I would probably recommend that one. There's a lot of fun songs on here. I mean, Incommunicado, it's just a fun fucking rock song about wanting to be a fucking famous, American Express cards, wanting your own commercials, wanting your own cocktail bar. A lot of us can relate to that. This album ends on sort of a sour note. You think it's going to end on a good note. The Last Straw, the last song on the record, the whole song talking about, I'm be so responsible. We lost our balls. Do we just not care? With terminal cases, we keep taking medicine, pretending the end isn't quite that near. We make futile gestures, act to the cameras with our made-up faces and our PR smiles. And when the angel comes down to deliver us, find out after all, we're only men of straw. So he's saying, I realize that this shit's bad, and it's bad for everybody. And we're just clutching at straws. We're looking for something, And it's funny because you think, great, there's a great realization. They're going to put it down. And then if you turn up your speakers at the very end, you'll hear very ominous sounding, no, and then a bit of laughing. And it's kind of like, that's how you're going to leave the fucking record? That's the last we hear of Fish in this band. Yeah, so this is the fourth and final album with Fish on it. They change singers. They move on to Steve Hogarth. H. Season's End is the next record. But this album didn't sell as well as they wanted it to. Didn't chart as high as it should have. So Fish left. The band kept trucking on, and they went on to make some great fucking records. I mean, on par with this shit. It really shows you how great this band is on their longevity and how they know how to take ideas, flesh them out, give them great atmosphere, a great feeling. And I really think that any rock fan would like this. Fish isn't the greatest singer, but he is a great poet, and he can put off a hell of a performance. White Russian, to be exact. Yeah, White Russian is my favorite song. Okay, but highlights off of here are the first three tracks. Hotel Hobbies, Warm White Circles, and That Time of the Night. And That Time of the Night has great synths on the opening. Ian Mosley just ride, and then kind of like a heartbeat. And it just explodes, and Fish comes in singing, if you ask me, how do I feel inside? It's so good. If you're not even a fan of rock music, just check this shit out. The sound just washes over you like an ocean cloud. It really is something that sticks with you. It stuck with me for a year more. I listened to this shit nonstop. Inspired me to play drums, inspired me to be a better fucking songwriter, be more adventurous with the ideas that I want to take, and not being afraid to experiment with new sounds. I mean, just listen to Mark Kelly's, keyboard tones on this shit. I mean, how do you think of that? Like a whole synth sound, normal synth sound, but then you layer trumpets on the bottom, and then you layer regular E keyboard on the bottom. Okay. Creativity, full of energy on this record, and it's their best album, on par with the other one I was not wanted to talk about. That's coming later. yeah, but if you haven't listened to it, fucking check this shit out. If you are a fan, you know how good it is. Just fucking geek over it, like I am doing. Yeah, just like, subscribe. Tell me what you want to see. I'm a huge fan of Marillion and a huge fan of Genesis, so Genesis is probably coming next. Check the other videos on the channel, like, subscribe, and I'll see y'all later. We make futile gestures, act to the cameras with our made-up faces and our PR smiles.